With the launch of the Helldivers 2 cutting-edge warbond, we have 3 brand new primary weapons to start spreading some managed democracy with. But as we know, nothing good comes free, and the Super Earth Ministry of Weapons Development is still heavily reliant on the Helldivers themselves to keep the super credits rolling on in. And look, to be honest guys, with the amount of 500 kg bombs that we're just dropping willy-nilly on the battlefield, let's just say the Super Earth tax dollars can only go so far. So today, we answer the question, are these weapons worth your time and your hard-earned super credits? G'day there once again viewers, your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today we're taking a look at the LAS-16 Sickle, the ARC-12 Blitzer, and the SG-8P Punisher Plasma. So, at the time of recording this video guys, I've had the chance to use all 3 of these weapons across both automaton and terminated operations. And if I was to summarize all 3 of them with one overarching statement as a bit of a package deal if you will, it would be crowd control monsters to varying levels of success. It very much feels like the cutting-edge warbond, at least from a primary weapon perspective, is all about giving players new ways to deal with large quantities of smaller, squishier enemies, but overall leaving you far more reliant on stratagems and support weapons to deal with the larger, tankier threats that you'll see out there. So for this video, I want to run down the weapons in order of how you unlock them, talk about some of the weaknesses, the strengths, how good they actually are, because I said there's varying levels of success on offer here, and spoiler alert, the best is kinda up for grabs first up. The LAS-16 Sickle is the very first weapon available in the new warbond, and let me just tell you straight out of the gate here folks, I was pleasantly surprised when I picked this thing up for the first time. This is a new laser-based energy weapon that while still sits in the energy weapon category, it's basically an assault rifle. And as a means of comparison, the Sickle shares the same damage per shot as the Liberator assault rifle, but it gets a bump in fire rate to 750 rounds per minute, which is a big upgrade over the 640 rounds per minute that we have gotten used to from an AR-esque weapon so far. So while the 55 damage per shot may not look like a lot and look all that attractive, it's actually sporting a significantly buffed DPS in the AR category if you will, which makes the Sickle very competitive. But the boost in damage is not the only thing on offer with the Sickle here, folks. When you start considering some of the, let's call them quirks, that come from being an energy weapon, you really start to get an overall package that is just beyond the par, if I dare say. First up here, the Sickle does not hold a traditional magazine that requires a reload. Technically, at least. It holds a heatsink that, from my understanding, can fire approximately 60 to 75 shots in one burst before you overheat and requires you to reload the heatsink. Now in fairness, should you get to this point, it's a stupidly quick reload time that has you back in action before you can blink at times. It's really quite fast. But if you flutter the trigger, pace your shots, and somewhat switch regularly between your support and secondary and primary weapons, as you know, you do so when engaging different threats, you can actually get this thing to a point where you'll never really have to reload it, and it will still always be ready to fire. In fact, more often than not, you'll have a weapon in your loadout always ready for action with the Sickle at any given time. And just in case that wasn't enough here, you guys will have also seen the near perfect accuracy that this thing can sport once you get it going in the gameplay. It becomes an absolute, and excuse the pun here, laser beam. And while it only has light armor penetrating capabilities, its ability to change shots with this degree of accuracy means that you can even kind of deal with Devastator weak points with a degree of accuracy. And that's saying something given how small those weak points are. Outside of that though, in general use cases, it absolutely demolishes lighter enemies and is a beast in crowd control situation. This thing is without a doubt my new go-to weapon as an automatic primary weapon pick. Now, as much as I'd love to keep our enthusiasm going for the next weapon in the line here, we're unfortunately going to dial back the hype levels a little bit here for the next entry. Because quite frankly guys, the SG-8P Punisher Plasma ain't nothing too special here. Let's talk about it. Now, don't get me wrong here guys, I had some fun when using this weapon here. It's basically a shotgun that fires big, scorching balls of explosive plasma at people. With enough distance, the rounds basically arc in a way that turns it into a big old mortar cannon. So what's not to like here, right? And before I start ragging on it, in its current form, it does make short works of large groups of squishy enemies that are caught in the explosive blast, and on top of that, with the right angle, it can do some serious work on bile spewers, scout walkers. It can also do some half decent damage to charges as well with the right angle, and it's pretty good at staggering large amounts of enemies too. And these are things that should not be discounted. But here's the problem, folks. When you compare it against everything else that's out there, there's just so much out there already that does the same job, but kind of better, in my view. Now, I know that the comparison I'm about to make here is a little bit unfair, because one weapon is a primary and one is a support stratagem weapon. But I'm gonna make it anyway, because in reality, this is the kind of thinking that will inform whether you take this weapon or not. The grenade launcher stratagem completely invalidates the existence of this weapon for dealing with groups of lightly armored targets quickly and somewhat staggering larger targets. The SGP-8 requires a rechambering of a round every time you fire it, similar to its standard issue shotgun cousin, which means that you're going to want to make sure that every single shot you fire either kills a target or it staggers a target, so you aren't left completely out to dry. The grenade launcher is not bound to a rechamber every time you fire it, and it contains way more damage per shot, which means you're going to be able to more effectively kill more targets, but also stagger more targets as well. And to bring the comparison back to a primary weapon game as well here, the standard pump action shotgun, which we all know and love at this point, sports far more damage to the point where you'll be confident that it will kill a target in one shot, at least a lightly armored one, and it will do a good job at staggering fairly larger opponents as well. The amount of damage that the SG-8P Punisher Plasma does, or lack thereof, and the amount of lead that you need to put on moving targets means that you're going to very quickly feel like you're sacrificing a lot of capability for something that's kinda already in the game and is in a much better state, being the grenade launcher. If I could summarize the overarching statement of using the Punisher Plasma into one or a couple of key words here, it would be that it felt like a chore to use. It felt awkward as hell. And that's not to say I didn't have fun with it. I mean, hell, the novelty was there, it was new, it was exciting. I may even take it with me into a couple of higher difficulty challenges from time to time, just for the sake and the fun of it, right? But it will be far from my daily driver, and I feel like a lot of players are going to land in the same camp when it comes to this weapon. Which leaves us with the final weapon on the list here today, the Arc 12 Blitzer, which somewhat feels like a bit of a redemption arc for the cutting-edge war bond after the SG-8P. The Blitzer is, well, there's no other way of putting it. It's a lightning-spewing shotgun that fries anything caught within its wide arc of effectiveness. That includes friendlies, by the way, so be careful with that. But ignoring stats for a second here, I've got to be honest, folks, this is probably the one primary weapon in the entire game that does the absolute best job of satisfying the rule of cool. Because while this thing ain't the most effective weapon in the entire arsenal, holy shit, do I feel like Thor when I'm using it. Just walking up to bad guys and left hooking them with thousands of volts of pure freedom. It puts the dumbest grin on my face because of it. Now, obviously, the novelty is going to wear off, so the question remains, is it worth your time and your hard-earned requisition points? Look, novelty aside, there are certainly better, more effective things out there, and I don't see this weapon becoming a mainstay for a lot of people in its current form, especially on higher difficulties where heavier enemies are more common. But unlike the Punisher Plasma, it doesn't feel like a chore of a weapon to use. It's a fun gun, and it continues being fun for the long run. It's just not as power creeped as some of the other weapons out there. It still does a hefty 250 damage per hit here, and to lighter targets, that can smack multiple within one shot. And the brain chemical definitely goes brr when you do get multiple targets with one shot with this thing. It just feels fantastic. But its downfall can certainly be felt once you start coming across more enemy types, especially in higher difficulties. The Blitzer also has an incredibly long rechamber time, at least it feels like it does, so it's put to its best use when it drops multiple targets with one shot, and that is very possible to do with some good timing and some shot economy from yourself to make sure you're getting the most out of every trigger squeeze. The unlimited ammo element of the gun also does give it some awesome uptime, especially when you get cut off from supplies at a critical moment. Ultimately, guys, we do have a bit of a mixed bag on our hands here. Some true meta-defining standouts and some letdowns as well, but that's to be expected. Weapons that have a defined personality and defined roles to fulfill are far better than a bunch of weapons that feel samey in nature, and I can tell that the Helldiver devs are doing everything they can to sort of escape the samey approach weapons. This is going to naturally mean that some weapons will launch in a less powerful state and will require further work going on. It also means that some weapons are characteristically going to be worse just by the virtue of their design than some of other weapons out there, especially in certain situations. But that is the variety that the game needs to keep its weapon arsenal interesting for the long run, and for that, I'm thankful the developers are following that approach. But folks, with all of that said today, that is going to do it for today's video talking about the new Warbond weapons. If you guys enjoyed it, be sure to backhand the like button as it does go a long way to supporting the channel, and if you're new here, consider subscribing whilst you're at it, as I'd love to have you guys join the community here as well. Also, come check out our live streams live. We're doing a lot of Helldivers over there as well, along with some other games, and it would be lovely to have you guys join that element of our community as well. But once again, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Peace out, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Take care. Have a good one.